Imagine a boy, barely clinging to life, sprawled on the scorching sand of a merciless desert. His lips are cracked, his breath shallow, his small body trembling under the weight of a sun that offers no mercy. Beside him, his mother weeps, her heart breaking as she steps away, unable to bear the sight of her only child slipping toward death. They have no water, no bread, no hope. They've been cast out, rejected by their own family, abandoned by the very people who should have protected them. This boy, this forgotten son, has no inheritance, no future, no place in the world. His name is Ishmael. But in that moment of despair, when all seems lost, something extraordinary happens. The heavens stir. A voice breaks through the deadly silence. God hears the cry of the boy. This is not just a fleeting moment tucked away in the pages of Scripture. It's one of the most profound stories of redemption, resilience, and divine promise ever told. And it's a story that still speaks to us today, to anyone who has ever felt cast aside, overlooked, or forgotten. Welcome to the Untold Scriptures, where we dive deep into the stories that shaped history, faith, and the human spirit. Today, we're uncovering the hidden truth behind Ishmael, the rejected son who heard the voice of God. Let me take you back to a time when the world was raw, untamed, and full of mystery. A time when promises were made not in contracts, but in whispers from the divine. Picture a barren plain stretching between Canaan and Egypt, where the sand burns underfoot and the horizon shimmers with heat. In this unforgiving landscape, a woman walks alone. Her name is Hagar, an Egyptian servant, and she's pregnant, weak, and panting under the weight of her burden. The silence around her is deafening, broken only by the crunch of her sandals on the dry earth. She's running not toward something, but away. Away from pain, away from rejection, away from a household that has turned against her. But someone is watching. Someone hears her. And in that moment, before her son even takes his first breath, God himself calls out to her. He gives her unborn child a name, Ishmael, which means God hears. It's not a name chosen by Hagar or Abraham, the child's father. It comes straight from heaven, carrying a promise and a weight that will define this boy's life. Now, let's pause for a second and think about what that means. A name given by God isn't just a label, it's a destiny. It's a declaration that this child, born to a servant, born into a world that will reject him, is seen and heard by the Creator of the universe. But that promise doesn't mean his life will be easy. Far from it. Ishmael's story begins with tension, with conflict, with a household divided by jealousy and desperation. His father, Abraham, is a man of faith, a patriarch chosen by God to father a nation as numerous as the stars. But Abraham's wife, Sarah, is barren, unable to bear the child God promised. In a moment of human impatience, Sarah decides to take matters into her own hands. She gives Hagar, her Egyptian servant, to Abraham as a surrogate, hoping to fulfill God's promise through her. It's a decision born not of love but of desperation, a desperate attempt to force a divine plan into human terms. And so, Hagar conceives. But what begins as a solution quickly becomes a wound. Imagine the tension in that household. Sarah, the legitimate wife, watches as Hagar's belly grows, carrying the child she herself cannot bear. Jealousy festers. Words turn sharp, cutting like blades. Hagar, once a servant under Sarah's command, now carries Abraham's firstborn, and the dynamic shifts. Sarah's presence becomes a burden, her words laced with bitterness. Hagar can't bear it. Pregnant and vulnerable, she flees into the desert, her steps heavy with fear and despair. She's alone, without water, without direction, without hope. But the desert, as harsh as it is, becomes the stage for a divine encounter. As Hagar collapses, exhausted and broken, an angel of the Lord appears. He sees her. He hears her. And he speaks words that change everything. Behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. That's Genesis 16 verse 11, a verse that captures the heart of this story. God doesn't just see Hagar's pain, he responds to it. He names her son, promising that this child will not be forgotten, that he will live, that he will become something great. But the angel doesn't stop there. He goes on to describe what Ishmael will be. He shall be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone and everyone's hand against him. Genesis 16 verse 12. Now, that's a striking image. A wild donkey isn't a creature of palaces or cities. It's untamed, fierce, built for survival in the harshest of environments. This is no promise of an easy life. Ishmael will be a warrior, a man of conflict, shaped by the desert's relentless winds and scorching sun. He won't grow up in comfort, surrounded by wealth or privilege. His cradle will be the sand, his teacher the struggle for survival. Hagar, hearing these words, falls to her knees, her tears mixing with the hot dust. For the first time, she feels seen. She declares, "You are the God who sees me," Genesis 16 verse 13, and names the place Bir Lahairoi, the well of the living one who sees me. It's a moment of profound recognition. A moment where the invisible becomes visible, where a servant woman and her unborn son are acknowledged by the Creator himself. Hagar returns to Abraham's camp, no longer the same woman who fled. She carries not just a child in her womb, but a living promise. Time passes, and on a quiet night, Ishmael is born. Abraham takes the boy in his arms, calling him by the name given by God. He loves him deeply, raising him with tenderness, teaching him the ways of the desert. Ishmael grows up among tents and herds, learning to track animals, to listen to the wind, to respect the silence of the night. He's not a child of princes, educated in schools or palaces. He's a child of dust and sun, his heart pure but burdened by the tension of a divided household. Even in his innocence, there's something about him that unsettles Sarah. His laughter, his presence, his very existence is a reminder of her own barrenness, a wound that festers even as she tries to hide it. As Ishmael grows, the camp becomes a battleground of silent glances and unspoken resentments. Sarah watches him with cold eyes, her heart torn between guilt and frustration. He's Abraham's firstborn, the son of her servant, and every step he takes feels like a challenge to her place in the family. Abraham, caught between his love for his son and his loyalty to his wife, tries to keep the peace, but the tension is palpable. One afternoon, Ishmael, still a boy, approaches Sarah with a handful of wildflowers he's picked from the desert. It's a simple, innocent gesture, his small hands outstretched, a smile on his face. But Sarah doesn't embrace him. She looks at the flowers, then at him, and says, "Go play with your mother." The words are cold, cutting deeper than any sword. Hagar, watching from a distance, feels her heart tighten. Not for herself, but for her son. She knows Ishmael is Abraham's child, but he'll never be fully accepted in this household. The divide grows wider, the air heavier, the silence more oppressive. Years pass, and the tension only deepens. Ishmael is no longer a baby, but a boy growing strong, his steps firm, his eyes alert. He runs among the tents, climbs rocks, follows the shepherds at a distance. But even his laughter can't fill the emptiness in Sarah's heart. Abraham, now nearly 100 years old, still clings to the promise God made that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars. But no new word comes from heaven, only the sound of the wind and Sarah's hidden sobs. Then, one day, everything changes. 3 mysterious visitors appear on the plains of Mamre. They carry no weapons, ride no horses, but there's something otherworldly about them. Abraham welcomes them with hospitality, unaware that he's hosting divine messengers. As they eat, one of them speaks words that pierce Sarah's heart. "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife shall have a son," Genesis 18 verse 10. Sarah, listening from the tent, laughs, a bitter, cynical laugh born of years of waiting, pain and shame. "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure?" she mutters. But the angel hears her and responds, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Genesis 18 verse 14. Those words linger like fire in Sarah's heart. The visitors leave, but their promise remains. Sarah tries to stifle her hope, afraid to dream only to be disappointed again. But her body begins to change. Fatigue gives way to new energy. Aversion to food becomes appetite, and then, one day, she feels it movement. Life. With trembling hands, she touches her belly. And she knows the promise has come. Months later, under a starry sky, Sarah gives birth to a son. His cry cuts through the desert air like soft thunder. They name him Isaac, meaning laughter. Because Sarah says, "God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me." Genesis 21 verse 6. The camp is filled with joy, with feasts and celebrations. But not everyone rejoices. Hagar watches from a distance, her heart heavy. Ishmael, now about 14, looks at the newborn with curiosity, unaware of how this child will change his life. The birth of Isaac shifts everything. Ishmael, once the center of Abraham's attention, is no longer the only son. The promise now has a new heir, one born of the legitimate wife, one who carries the covenant in his blood. During a feast to celebrate Isaac's weaning, Ishmael is seen laughing, perhaps teasing, perhaps just being a teenager. But to Sarah, it's more than a laugh. It's a threat. A reminder of the boy who came before her son. Her heart hardens, and she approaches Abraham with a demand that shatters the fragile peace. Cast out this slave woman with her son. For the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. Genesis 21 verse 10. Abraham is devastated. Ishmael is his firstborn, the boy he loves, the one who first called him father. But that night, God speaks to him, confirming Sarah's demand but adding a promise. Through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also. Because he is your offspring. Genesis 21 verses 12 to 13. At dawn, Abraham prepares a skin of water and some bread, his hands trembling as he hands them to Hagar. He touches Ishmael's shoulder. Tries to smile, but the pain in his eyes says everything. No words are spoken, no farewells uttered. Hagar and Ishmael walk into the desert, their steps heavy, their future uncertain. The tents of Abraham's camp fade into the distance, and they are alone. The sun beats down, the sand burns their feet, and the water dwindles. Hagar's heart aches. Not just for herself, but for her son, who carries the weight of rejection on his young shoulders. They walk until the water runs out, until Ishmael stumbles, too weak to go on. Hagar, unable to watch him die, places him under a small bush, its sparse shade offering little comfort. She steps away, just far enough to shield herself from the sight of his final moments, and she weeps. "Let me not look on the death of the child," she cries, Genesis 21 verse 16. Ishmael, lying there, doesn't beg or complain. He simply endures, his chest rising and falling, slower with each breath. But in that moment of utter despair, something happens. A faint sound, a muffled weeping, rises from the boy. It's not loud, not dramatic, but it reaches beyond the desert, beyond the sand, straight to the heavens. And God hears. The sky opens, not with thunder or lightning, but with a quiet presence. An angel calls to Hagar, "What troubles you, Hagar? Fear not. For God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Rise, lift up the boy, and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation." Genesis 21 verses 17 to 18. Hagar lifts her tear-streaked face, and God opens her eyes. There, in the middle of the desert, is a well, real, shimmering, life-giving. She runs to it, fills the skin, and pours water over Ishmael's parched lips. He breathes deeply, his eyes fluttering open. Life returns. Hagar weeps again, but now it's a cry of relief, of gratitude, of awe. She remembers the God who saw her years ago, and now she knows he hears her too. Ishmael, the boy who was meant to die, stands again, not by human hands, but by the mercy of God. This is where we'll pause, but the story is far from over. Ishmael's journey is just beginning, and it's one of survival, strength, and a legacy that will echo through the sands of time. Keep watching, because what comes next will show you how a rejected boy becomes a father of nations, a symbol of hope for all who feel forgotten. Subscribe, hit that like button, and join us as we continue this incredible tale on the Untold Scriptures. Welcome back to the Untold Scriptures, where we're diving deep into the hidden stories of the Bible that resonate with the heart and soul. If you're just joining us, we've begun unraveling the incredible tale of Ishmael, the boy rejected by his family, abandoned in the desert, and yet heard by God himself. In our last video, we left Ishmael and his mother, Hagar, at a turning point. They were cast out from Abraham's camp, left with nothing but a skin of water and a piece of bread, facing the merciless desert. But God intervened. He heard Ishmael's faint cry, opened Hagar's eyes to a well of water, and reaffirmed his promise. This boy, this forgotten son, would not die but would become a great nation. That moment was just the beginning. Today, we're going to walk with Ishmael as he grows from a boy on the brink of death into a man forged by the desert, shaped by struggle, and guided by a promise that refuses to fade. So, grab a seat, maybe a cup of coffee, and let's journey into the sands to see how a rejected child becomes a warrior, a survivor, and a father of tribes. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like to keep these stories alive. Picture the desert of Beersheba, a vast, unforgiving expanse where the sun doesn't just shine, it scorches. The sand burns underfoot, and the horizon shimmers with heat, playing tricks on weary eyes. This is where Ishmael and Hagar find themselves after their exile from Abraham's camp. The well that saved them is now behind them, a silent testament to God's mercy, but the road ahead is anything but certain. Hagar, still shaken from the ordeal, looks at her son, now about 14. His eyes wide but weary, his body weak but alive. She knows they can't go back. The tents of Abraham, once a place of shelter, are now a closed door. But Hagar is no longer the fleeing servant she once was. That encounter with God's angel years ago, and now this miracle at the well, has changed her. She's a mother with a mission, carrying a promise in her heart and a son by her side. And Ishmael? He's young, but there's a spark in him, a resilience that's starting to take root, even if he doesn't fully understand it yet. Their first days in the desert are a test of survival. The water skin is refilled at the well, but it won't last forever. The bread is gone, crumbled into the sand. Hagar knows they need to find a place to call their own, a place where no one will dictate their steps or call her servant again. She leads Ishmael deeper into the wilderness, her steps measured, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of life, a plant, a shadow, a hint of water. The desert is a cruel teacher, but it's also a patient one. It forces you to learn, to adapt, to listen. And Hagar, who once ran from pain, now walks with purpose. She teaches Ishmael to watch the ground for tracks, to feel the air for shifts in the wind, to smell the faint dampness that might betray a hidden spring. The desert doesn't give, she tells him one evening as they sit by a small fire, the stars blazing above. But it hides. You just have to know where to look. Ishmael listens, his young mind soaking up her words like dry earth drinks rain. He's not the carefree boy who once ran among Abraham's flocks, laughing and hiding behind tent curtains. That boy is fading, replaced by someone new, someone the desert is shaping. His hands, once soft, begin to harden as he learns to grip a stick, to sharpen it against rocks, to use it to dig for roots or prod the ground for signs of moisture. His feet, once accustomed to the soft paths of the camp, now blister and toughen against the burning sand. He learns to walk silently, to move with the rhythm of the wind so as not to disturb the animals that might lead them to water. Hagar watches him, her heart a mix of pride and pain. She sees the boy she almost lost, but also the man he's becoming. "You're stronger than you know," she tells him one night, her voice soft but firm. "God heard you once. He'll hear you again." The desert becomes their home, not because it's welcoming, but because they have no choice. They set up a small tent, pieced together from scraps of cloth and animal hides. It's not much, but it's theirs. Hagar teaches Ishmael to hunt, to track the gazelles that dart across the dunes, to listen for the faint rustle of a snake or the scamper of a desert fox. He's clumsy at first, his makeshift spear missing its mark, his steps too loud. But he learns. Day after day, he practices. His eyes sharpening, his movements growing more precise. One morning, he spots a gazelle grazing near a cluster of thorny bushes. He crouches low, his heart pounding, his body still as the rocks around him. He waits, remembering Hagar's words, "Patience is your weapon." When the moment comes, he throws his spear, and it lands true. The gazelle falls. And for the first time, Ishmael feels something new, not just pride, but purpose. He's not just surviving, he's providing. Hagar smiles when he drags the gazelle back to their camp, her eyes bright with silent approval. They eat well that night, the meat roasting over their small fire, the stars above them like a canopy of promises. But survival isn't just about food or water. It's about the heart, the spirit, the will to keep going. And Ishmael carries a wound that no desert skill can heal. At night, when the fire dies down and the desert grows cold, he lies awake, staring at the stars. He remembers Abraham, his father's strong hands, his warm voice, the way he used to point to the sky and talk about promises. "Your descendants will be like these," Abraham once said, his eyes shining. But now Ishmael wonders, was he part of that promise? Why did his father let him go? Why did Sarah's eyes turn so cold? He doesn't ask Hagar these questions. He doesn't need to. She sees it in his silence, in the way his gaze lingers on the horizon, as if hoping Abraham might appear, calling him back. Hagar knows she can't erase that pain. But she can give him something else, a sense of identity, a reason to stand tall. "You are Ishmael," she tells him one evening as they sit by the fire. "God named you. Not Abraham, not Sarah, not me. God. He heard you before you were born, and he heard you when you were dying. That's who you are. Don't let anyone tell you different." Her words sink deep, like water into parched earth. Ishmael nods, his young face serious. He's starting to understand that his story isn't just about rejection, it's about redemption. God didn't just save him, God chose him. For what? He doesn't yet know, but the spark of that promise keeps him moving forward. As years pass, Ishmael grows stronger, his body adapting to the desert's demands. His muscles harden. His skin darkens under the relentless sun, his eyes learn to read the landscape like a scroll. He becomes a hunter, not for sport but for survival. He learns to craft a bow from crooked wood and braided fibers, his fingers bleeding as he ties the strings tight. Day after day, he practices, aiming at stones, then at moving targets. The first time his arrow flies straight, striking a rock with a satisfying thud, he smiles, a rare, unguarded moment that makes Hagar's heart swell. "The desert is your teacher," she says. Her voice steady. "It doesn't care who you were. It only cares who you become." Ishmael becomes something extraordinary. He learns to move silently, to blend into the dunes, to hear the breath of a gazelle 100 paces away. He learns to find water where others see only sand, hidden wells, roots that hold moisture, stones that cast shade. The desert, once a place of death, becomes his domain. He's not just surviving, he's mastering it. Hagar watches him with quiet pride, knowing that every skill he hones is a step toward the promise God made. But she also knows he needs more than the desert. He needs a home, a family, a legacy. So, one day, she makes a decision. She journeys back to Egypt, her homeland, to find a wife for her son. She chooses a woman who understands the sands, the silence, the struggle, an Egyptian, like herself, who will walk beside Ishmael without trying to tame him. The wedding is simple. Nothing like the grand feasts of Canaan. There are no noble guests, no lavish gifts, just a fire kindled under the stars, bread shared, and eyes meeting eyes. Ishmael, now a young man, stands tall. His gaze steady but searching. His bride, whose name the scriptures don't record, brings a new kind of strength to their small camp. She's not just a partner, she's an ally. Someone who understands the desert's rhythms and respects the promise that burns in Ishmael's heart. Together, they set up a new tent, a place that belongs to them alone. And in that tent, something shifts. Ishmael is no longer just a boy surviving. He's a man building. Children come, sons who inherit their father's strength and their mother's resilience. Hagar, now older, watches as her son's tent becomes a home, a place of laughter and life. But even as Ishmael builds this new life, the desert remains his teacher. He learns to lead, not with force but with wisdom. He learns to protect, not with walls but with vigilance. He learns to endure, because that's what the desert demands. His sons grow, their small feet leaving tracks in the sand, their voices echoing in the night. And with each child, the promise grows stronger. God said Ishmael would become a great nation, and now, in the cries of his children, that nation is beginning to take shape. But the desert is not a gentle place. It gives nothing freely, and Ishmael's growing family draws attention. Other tribes, nomadic wanderers, and even distant kingdoms begin to notice the man who hunts with his eyes closed, whose arrows never miss, whose tent stands firm against the wind. Whispers spread, Ishmael, the warrior of the south. Some speak of him with respect, others with fear. He's not just a survivor anymore. He's a presence, a force. And with that presence comes challenge. The desert is vast, but its resources, water, grazing land, trade routes, are precious. Rival tribes cast covetous eyes on the wells Ishmael's family relies on. Raiders test his strength, probing for weakness. Ishmael knows he has no armies, no bronze weapons, no fortified cities. But he has something better, the desert itself. He knows its secrets, its hiding places, its rhythms. When raiders come, they find empty camps, vanished tents, and arrows that seem to come from nowhere. Ishmael is learning not just to survive, but to defend what's his. One night, as a rival tribe approaches a well his family depends on, Ishmael stands guard. His sons, still young, watch from the shadows as he positions himself among the rocks, his bow ready. The raiders, armed with iron swords, expect an easy victory. But Ishmael's arrows fly swift and true, striking the ground just inches from their leader's feet. It's a warning, not a kill. The raiders retreat, their shouts swallowed by the night. Ishmael's sons look at him with wide eyes, seeing not just a father but a protector, a leader. Never let them take what God has given us, he tells them, his voice low but firm. They nod, understanding that their survival is tied to the promise, to the God who heard their father's cry. As Ishmael's family grows, so does his reputation. His tent, once solitary, is now one among many. His sons begin to form their own camps, their own families, their own stories. The desert, once a place of exile, is becoming a territory, a place where Ishmael's name carries weight. He's not a king, not a ruler in the way the world understands. But he's something more, a patriarch, a man who turned rejection into resilience, abandonment into authority. The promise is alive, not just in his survival, but in the lives he's building. His sons will carry his name, his story, his faith. And though he still carries the pain of his father's silence, the memory of Abraham's trembling hands as he handed him the water skin, Ishmael knows he's not alone. The God who heard him in the desert is still listening, still guiding, still fulfilling. That's where we'll leave Ishmael for now, standing tall in the desert, his bow in hand, his family growing, his legacy taking root. But this is far from the end. The promise is just beginning to unfold, and the challenges ahead will test Ishmael's strength, his faith, and his heart. What happens when his sons become leaders in their own right? How does a man rejected by his family build a nation? And what happens when the past comes calling, when the shadow of Abraham's tents falls across the desert once more? Stick with us on the Untold Scriptures to find out. If this story is speaking to you, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Ishmael's journey is a reminder that even in the wilderness, God hears, God sees, and God acts. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to the Untold Scriptures. where we're diving deep into the stories that echo through time, stories that speak to the heart and remind us of God's unending faithfulness. If you've been following along, you know we're on an incredible journey with Ishmael, the boy who was cast out, rejected by his family, yet heard by God himself. In our last video, we saw Ishmael and his mother, Hagar, survive the impossible. Exiled from Abraham's camp with nothing but a skin of water and a piece of bread, they faced death in the desert. But God intervened, opening Hagar's eyes to a life-saving well and reaffirming his promise. Ishmael would not only live but become a great nation. We left him growing strong in the wilderness, learning the desert's ways, becoming a hunter, a survivor, a man forged by struggle. Today, we're stepping into the next chapter of his life, a chapter where Ishmael becomes more than a survivor. He becomes a husband, a father, a leader, laying the foundations for a legacy that will stretch across the sands of time. So, settle in, maybe grab a snack, and let's walk with Ishmael as he builds a life from the dust. A life that proves God's promises never fail. And if this story moves you, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's next. The desert of Beersheba is a harsh world, a place where the sun burns without mercy and the wind carries whispers of both life and death. Ishmael, now a young man, stands taller than before. His shoulders broad, his skin darkened by years under the relentless sun. His hands, once soft from the days in Abraham's camp, are now calloused, shaped by the bow he's learned to wield with deadly precision. Hagar, his mother, watches him with a quiet pride, her eyes tracing the boy who once lay dying under a bush. Now a man who moves with the grace of a gazelle and the strength of the desert itself. Their small tent, patched together from hides and cloth, is a far cry from the sprawling camp of Abraham. But it's theirs, a sanctuary built from survival, faith, and a promise that burns brighter with each passing day. Ishmael has mastered the desert's lessons: how to find water in hidden roots, how to track a fox through shifting dunes, how to listen to the wind for signs of danger. But there's something else he's learning, something deeper, the weight of his name, Ishmael, God hears. It's a name that carries a story, a destiny, and a question. What does it mean to be chosen by God when the world has cast you aside? Hagar knows her son needs more than survival skills to fulfill the promise God made. He needs roots, a family, a legacy to carry his name forward. The desert has made him strong, but it's a lonely place, and Hagar sees the way Ishmael's eyes linger on the horizon, as if searching for something or someone. She knows that look. It's the same one she carried when she fled Sarah's cruelty years ago, pregnant and alone. It's the look of someone who longs for belonging, for a place to call home. So, one day, as the sun dips low and paints the dunes in shades of gold, Hagar makes a decision. "You're not a boy anymore," she tells Ishmael, her voice steady but warm. "You're a man. And a man needs a companion, someone to share the fire, the nights, the promise." Ishmael looks at her, his dark eyes curious but guarded. He's never questioned his mother's wisdom, but he's unsure what she means. Hagar smiles, a rare softness in her weathered face. "I'm going back to Egypt," she says. "Not to stay, but to find someone for you. Someone who knows the sand, who understands silence, who will walk beside you." Egypt is Hagar's homeland, a place she left long ago as a servant in Abraham's household. It's a land of rivers and riches, but also of memories of her youth, her people, her roots. She travels alone, her steps sure despite her age, driven by a mother's instinct to secure her son's future. In Egypt, she seeks out a woman who can match Ishmael's strength, someone who won't flinch at the desert's harshness or shy away from the weight of his story. She finds her, a young Egyptian woman whose name the scriptures don't record, but whose spirit is as fierce as the Nile and as enduring as the desert winds. She's not a princess or a noble, but she's a daughter of the sands, raised in a land where survival demands resilience. Hagar sees in her the same fire she once carried, the same faith that sustained her through exile. She brings her back to the desert, to Ishmael, to the small tent that holds their world. The wedding is nothing like the grand feasts of Canaan, where Abraham's people might have celebrated with flocks of sheep and rivers of wine. It's simple, raw, real. Under a sky blazing with stars, Ishmael and his bride stand before a small fire. Hagar, the only witness, kindles the flames, her hands steady as she breaks bread and shares it between them. There are no guests, no music, no elaborate rituals, just the crackle of the fire, the rustle of the wind, and the quiet exchange of vows. Ishmael, his bow slung across his back, looks at his bride, her eyes meeting his with a strength that needs no words. She doesn't ask him to be anything other than what he is, a man of the desert, a son of a promise, a survivor of rejection. And in that moment, as their hands touch over the shared bread, Ishmael feels something new, not just survival, but hope. This is the beginning of a new chapter, a new tent, a new life. They set up their own camp, a little ways from Hagar's. Their tent staked firmly against the desert's winds. Ishmael's bride brings a new rhythm to their days. She weaves cloth with deft fingers, cooks meals that fill the air with warmth, and learns the desert's ways alongside her husband. Together, they hunt, they build, they endure. And soon, their tent is filled with a new sound, the cry of a child. Ishmael's first son is born, a boy with his father's dark eyes and his mother's fierce spirit. They name him Nebaioth, a name that carries the weight of a new beginning. Ishmael holds the boy in his arms, his heart swelling with a love he didn't know he could feel. It's different from the love he felt for Abraham, his father, or Hagar, his mother. This is a love that looks forward, a love that sees the future. Hagar, watching from her tent, smiles through tears. She sees the promise taking shape, not just in Ishmael's survival, but in the life he's building. More children follow, sons who fill the camp with laughter, with chaos, with life. Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedema, 12 sons in all. Each one a testament to God's word. I will make him a great nation. Genesis 21 verse 18. The desert, once a place of death, now echoes with the sounds of a family growing, of tents multiplying, of a legacy taking root. Ishmael teaches his sons as Hagar taught him, to track, to hunt, to find water in the driest places. But he teaches them something more, the story of their name. You are sons of Ishmael, he tells them one night, gathered around the fire. God heard me when I was dying, when I had nothing. He hears you too. Never forget that. His sons listen. Their young faces serious, their eyes reflecting the flames. They don't yet understand the weight of their father's words, but they feel it, the pride, the promise, the pain. Life in the desert is never easy. The sun still burns, the winds still howl, and the wells are never guaranteed. Ishmael and his family face constant challenges, raiders who eye their grazing lands, storms that bury their tents in sand, days when water is scarce. But Ishmael is no longer the boy who stumbled in the desert. He's a leader, a protector, a father. He teaches his sons to stand watch at night, to sharpen their spears, to trust the desert signs. His wife, strong and steady, keeps the camp running, her hands weaving, her voice calming the children when the winds grow fierce. Hagar, now a grandmother, moves slower but remains the heart of their small clan. She tells stories to Ishmael's sons, stories of the well, of the angel, of the God who sees and hears. Your father was chosen, she says, her voice soft but sure. Not by men, but by God. And so are you. Ishmael's heart, though, is not without its shadows. At night, when the camp is quiet and his family sleeps, he steps outside, his eyes drawn to the stars. They're the same stars Abraham once showed him, promising descendants as numerous as they are. But Ishmael is no longer part of that camp, that promise. He wonders if Abraham thinks of him, if Sarah ever softened, if Isaac, the son of the promise, knows he has a brother. The pain of rejection lingers, a quiet ache that the desert can't erase. But Ishmael doesn't let it consume him. He looks at his sons, sleeping soundly in their tent, and feels the weight of God's promise. I will make him a great nation, the angel said, and Ishmael is beginning to see it not in wealth or power, but in the lives growing around him. In the tents rising from the dust, in the laughter that fills the night. The desert is changing. Where once there was only Ishmael's solitary tent, now there are others, small camps springing up as his sons grow and take wives of their own. Nebaioth, the eldest, is already showing signs of leadership, his steady hands guiding the younger boys. Kedar, fiery and bold, practices with a bow, aiming to match his father's skill. The others, still young, run through the camp. Their voice is a reminder that life is taking hold in a place meant for death. Ishmael watches them, his heart torn between pride and wonder. He's no longer just a survivor, he's a patriarch. A man whose name will live on through his sons. But he knows the desert doesn't give its blessings freely. The more his family grows, the more attention they draw from rival tribes. From merchants passing through, from whispers that carry his name across the dunes, Ishmael, the warrior of the south. One evening, as the sun sets and the camp settles, Ishmael gathers his family around the fire. His wife sits beside him, her hand resting on their youngest son's shoulder. Hagar, her hair now streaked with silver, watches from the edge of the circle. Ishmael looks at his sons, their faces lit by the flames, and speaks. "We are not like other people," he says, his voice low but clear. "We don't have cities or walls. We don't have kings or armies. But we have something greater. We have the God who hears. He heard me when I was nothing, when I was cast out. He hears us now. And he will hear you always." His sons nod, their eyes wide, their hearts stirred. They don't fully understand yet, but they will. The promise is alive, growing with every child, every tent, every step they take in the desert. That's where we'll pause Ishmael's story for now, with his family growing, his legacy taking shape, and the desert beginning to carry his name. But the journey is far from over. What happens when Ishmael's sons become leaders in their own right? How will they face the challenges of a world that covets their wells, their freedom, their very existence? And what happens when the past comes calling, when the shadow of Abraham's tents falls across the desert once more? Stick with us on the Untold Scriptures to find out. If this story is resonating with you, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Ishmael's journey is a reminder that even in the wilderness, God's promises hold firm, and his voice is never far away. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to the Untold Scriptures, where we're diving deep into the stories that don't just live in the pages of the Bible, but breathe in the hearts of those who hear them. If you've been with us on this journey, you know we're following Ishmael, the boy cast out into the desert, rejected by his family, yet chosen by God. In our last video, we saw Ishmael grow from a boy saved by a miraculous well into a man, a husband, a father. With his Egyptian wife by his side and his mother, Hagar, as his guide, he's begun to build a family, 12 sons. Each one a living testament to God's promise that he would become a great nation. The desert, once a place of death, is now alive with the sounds of his children, the stakes of new tents, and the spark of a legacy taking root. But the desert is no gentle cradle. It's a crucible, a place that tests every step, every choice, every dream. Today, we're going to walk with Ishmael as his sons grow into leaders, as his tents multiply across the dunes, and as his name begins to echo beyond the sands. This is the story of how a rejected son becomes a patriarch, not of cities or kings, but of a people forged by faith and fire. So, grab a seat, maybe something to drink, and let's step back into the desert with Ishmael. And if this story is stirring something in you, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. The desert of Beersheba stretches out like an endless sea, its dunes shifting under the wind, its silence broken only by the occasional cry of a hawk or the rustle of a snake. Ishmael's camp, once a single tent shared with Hagar, is now a small cluster of shelters, their sturdy frames woven from goat hair and anchored against the storms. Ishmael, now in his prime, stands at the edge of the camp, his bow slung across his back, his eyes scanning the horizon. His wife, strong and steady, tends to their youngest sons, her hands deft as she weaves cloth or stirs a pot over the fire. Hagar, her hair silvered by time, sits nearby, her gaze fixed on her son with a pride that needs no words. The desert has shaped them all. Hagar, the servant who became a mother of promise, Ishmael's wife, the Egyptian who brought life to their tent, and Ishmael himself, the boy who survived exile to become a man of the wilderness. But the heart of their camp is the 12 sons: Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedema. Each boy carries his father's strength, his mother's resilience, and the promise God spoke over Ishmael years ago: I will make him a great nation. Genesis 21 verse 18. These boys are not just children, they're the seeds of something greater. Nebaioth, the eldest, is steady and honorable, his calm demeanor earning him respect even as a young man. Kedar, fiery and bold, practices with a bow, determined to match his father's skill. Adbeel is quiet, observant, always watching the stars as if they hold secrets. Mibsam and Mishma, inseparable brothers, are drawn to the trade routes, their quick minds noting every caravan that passes. Duma and Massa, still young, run through the camp, their laughter a defiance of the desert's harshness. Hadad is impetuous, his energy barely contained, while Tema shows a wisdom beyond his years, already settling disputes among his brothers. Jetur, Naphish, and Kedema, the youngest, follow their older siblings, learning the desert's ways, how to track a gazelle, how to find water in a dry wadi, how to listen to the wind for signs of danger. Ishmael watches them, his heart swelling with a mix of pride and responsibility. These are not just his sons, they are the foundation of a nation, a people God has promised to raise from the dust. Ishmael knows the desert doesn't give its blessings freely. Every well, every grazing patch, every moment of peace must be earned. He teaches his sons as Hagar taught him, not just to survive but to thrive. The desert is your book, he tells them one evening, gathered around a fire that casts long shadows across the sand. Every track, every stone, every gust of wind has a story. Learn to read it, and it will never betray you. His sons listen, their faces lit by the flames, their eyes wide with curiosity. Nebaioth nods, his steady gaze fixed on his father. Kedar grips his bow, eager to prove himself. The younger boys shift closer, hanging on every word. Ishmael teaches them to hunt, to move silently, to find water where others see only desolation. But he teaches them something more, the story of their name. You are sons of Ishmael, he says, his voice low but firm. God heard me when I was nothing, when I lay dying under a bush. He named me before I was born. He hears you too. Never forget who you are. The camp grows as the boys mature. Nebaioth, now a young man, sets up his own tent, his steady hands guiding his younger brothers. Kedar, ever the warrior, leads hunts, his arrows flying true like his father's. Mibsam and Mishma begin to explore the trade routes, bartering with passing merchants for cloth, spices, and tools. Duma and Massa, quick and clever, learn to navigate the desert paths, their eyes sharp for signs of caravans. The camp is no longer just a family, it's a community, a small but growing network of tents that dot the dunes. Ishmael's wife oversees the women, who weave the sturdy black tents that will later be known as the tents of Kedar, their dark fabric a symbol of strength against the desert storms. Hagar, though slower now, remains the heart of the camp, her stories of the well and the angel weaving a thread of faith through every tent. The desert is changing, and so is Ishmael's role. He's no longer just a hunter or a father, he's a leader, a patriarch. His sons look to him for guidance, not just in survival but in life. One night, a dispute breaks out between Hadad and Tema over a grazing patch. Hadad, hot-headed, insists it's his by right. Tema, calm but firm, argues for sharing it with a neighboring clan. Ishmael listens, his face unreadable, then speaks. The desert doesn't belong to us, he says. It belongs to God. We guard what he gives, but we don't hoard it. Share the land, and you'll gain allies, not enemies. His words settle the matter, and the boys learn a lesson deeper than grazing rights. Leadership is about wisdom, not force. Ishmael's authority grows, not through fear but through example. His sons see a man who survived exile, who turned rejection into resilience, and they strive to emulate him. As the clans grow, so does their influence. Merchants passing through the desert begin to notice the tents of Ishmael's family. They see the sturdy shelters, the well-tended flocks, the sharp-eyed men who guard the wells. Word spreads. There's a new presence in the wilderness, a people who know the desert better than anyone. Mibsam and Mishma, with their knack for trade, begin to barter with caravans. Exchanging goat hides and water for goods from distant lands, spices from the east, cloth from Egypt, tools from the north. Nebaioth negotiates with passing nomads, his calm demeanor earning their respect. Even Kedar, the warrior, learns to speak with merchants, his fierce presence ensuring fair deals. The clans are becoming more than a family, they're a force. A people who control the desert's vital routes. Ishmael watches it all, his heart torn between pride and humility. He never sought this power, influence, a name that carries weight. All he wanted was to survive, to protect his family, to honor the God who heard him. But God's promise is unfolding, and Ishmael is beginning to see it, a nation, not of cities or walls, but of tents and tribes rooted in faith. Yet, with growth comes attention, and not all of it is welcome. The desert is vast, but its resources are scarce. Wells, grazing lands, and trade routes are prized, and other tribes cast covetous eyes on what Ishmael's clans have built. One evening, as the sun sets and the camp prepares for night, Ishmael spots a faint dust cloud on the horizon, a sign of riders, too many to be merchants. He gathers his sons, his voice calm but urgent. "Stay low, stay quiet," he says. "The desert is our shield." That night, a rival tribe approaches, their torches flickering in the dark. They seek a well Ishmael's family relies on, their swords glinting with intent. But Ishmael and his sons are ready. Kedar, bow in hand, positions himself among the rocks. Nebaioth leads the younger boys to safety. Ishmael, silent as a shadow, moves through the dunes, his arrows ready. When the raiders draw near, a single arrow slices through the air, landing at their leader's feet. It's a warning, not a strike. The raiders hesitate, then retreat, their plans undone by the desert's silent defenders. Ishmael's sons gather around him, their eyes wide with awe. "How did you know?" Kedar asks. Ishmael smiles faintly. "The desert told me." This victory, small but significant, spreads Ishmael's name further. Merchants speak of the man who guards the wells, whose sons protect the routes, whose tents stand firm against the wind. The clans of Ishmael are no longer just a family, they're a people, a nation in the making. But Ishmael knows this is only the beginning. His sons are growing, their tents spreading, their influence reaching beyond the dunes. Yet, in the quiet of the night, he still feels the shadow of his past. He thinks of Abraham, his father, and wonders if he knows of the life he's built. He thinks of Sarah, whose cold eyes sent him away, and wonders if she ever regretted it. He thinks of Isaac, the brother he's never met, and wonders if they share the same stars. These thoughts don't consume him, but they linger, a quiet ache in a heart that's learned to endure. Hagar, now a grandmother to many, sees the weight her son carries. One evening, as they sit by the fire, she takes his hand. "You've done more than survive," she says, her voice soft but sure. "You've built. You've honored the God who heard you." "That's enough." Ishmael nods, his eyes on the flames. He knows she's right, but he also knows the desert demands more. His sons are becoming leaders, their clans growing, their names spreading. The promise is alive, but it's not yet complete. God said he would be a great nation, and Ishmael is beginning to see it not in wealth or power, but in the tents that dot the horizon, in the sons who carry his name, in the faith that binds them all. He's not a king, not a ruler in the world's eyes, but he's a patriarch, a man whose life is a testament to God's faithfulness. That's where we'll leave Ishmael for now, standing at the edge of his camp, his sons growing into leaders, his name echoing across the desert. But the story isn't over. What happens when the desert becomes a battleground, when rival tribes challenge the clans of Ishmael? How will his sons rise to protect what God has given them? And what happens when the past calls Ishmael back, when the shadow of Abraham's tents falls across the dunes once more? Stick with us on the Untold Scriptures to find out. If this story is speaking to your heart, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Ishmael's journey is a reminder that God's promises are stronger than rejection, brighter than the desert sun, and eternal as the stars. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to the Untold Scriptures, where we're diving into the stories that don't just fill the pages of the Bible, but pulse with life, faith, and the unshakable promises of God. If you've been walking with us through this journey, you know we're deep in the story of Ishmael, the boy cast out into the desert, rejected by his family, yet heard by the Creator himself. In our last video, we saw Ishmael's tents multiply across the sands of Beersheba, his 12 sons growing into leaders, their camps becoming a force in the wilderness. Nebaioth, Kedar. And their brothers are learning the desert's ways, guarding wells, trading with merchants, and carrying the weight of their father's name, a name that means God hears. But the desert is no place for the faint of heart. It's a land of beauty and danger, where every well, every grazing patch, every moment of peace is a prize to be won. Today, we're stepping into a new chapter, one where Ishmael's clans face their greatest challenges yet. Rival tribes are watching, their eyes on the wells and routes Ishmael's family controls. This is the story of how a man forged by exile becomes a protector, a strategist, a leader who defends what God has given without shedding unnecessary blood. So, settle in, grab a drink, and let's journey back to the desert with Ishmael. And if this story is stirring your soul, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's next. The desert night is quiet. But it's a deceptive kind of quiet, the kind that hides whispers of danger in the rustle of the wind. Ishmael stands at the edge of his camp, his bow in hand, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the stars meet the dunes. The air is cool, the sand soft under his feet, but there's a tension he can feel, like the taut string of his bow. His sons, now young men, are scattered across the camp, Nebaioth tending the flocks, Kedar sharpening arrows, Mibsam and Mishma counting goods from a recent trade. The tents, sturdy and black, stand firm against the night, their shapes a testament to the life Ishmael has built. His wife, her hands steady as ever, prepares bread by the fire, while Hagar, now slowed by age, watches her grandsons with a grandmother's pride. This is their world, a world of tents and stars, of faith and survival, of a promise that grows with every new dawn. But the desert doesn't let you rest. It tests you, always, and Ishmael knows the peace they've carved out is fragile, like a flame in the wind. The clans of Ishmael have become a presence in the wilderness. Their wells, carefully guarded, draw merchants from Egypt, Babylon, and beyond. Their flocks, guided by Nebaioth's steady hand, graze on patches of scrub that others overlook. Mibsam and Mishma have turned their sharp minds to trade, bartering hides and water for spices, cloth, and iron. Kedar, with his warrior's heart, patrols the routes, his bow a silent warning to any who might think the clans are weak. The name Ishmael is whispered now, not just as a man but as a people who know the desert's secrets, who move like shadows, who survive where others falter. But with that name comes attention, and not all of it is friendly. Other tribes, nomadic wanderers with sharp blades and sharper ambitions, eye the wells that sustain Ishmael's family. They see the grazing lands, the trade routes, the growing tents, and they want what Ishmael has built. The desert, for all its vastness, is a small place when it comes to survival. One night, as the moon hangs low, Ishmael spots a faint glow on the horizon, torches, too many to be travelers. He wakes his sons, his voice low but urgent. "Riders," he says, his eyes scanning the dark. "They're coming for the well." The well in question is a lifeline, a hidden spring Ishmael found years ago, its water clear and cold, sustaining their flocks and drawing merchants who pay well for a drink. Losing it would mean hardship, maybe death. Nebaioth, ever steady, gathers the younger boys, leading them to the safety of a nearby wadi. Kedar, his bow ready, takes his place beside his father. Mibsam and Mishma secure the camp, hiding valuables and preparing to move the women and children if needed. Ishmael's wife, her face calm but resolute, hands out water skins, knowing a fight might mean a long night. Hagar, too old to run, sits by the fire, her lips moving in silent prayer. Ishmael feels the weight of it all, his family, his promise, his God. But he's not the boy who once lay dying under a bush. He's a man who knows the desert, and the desert knows him. The raiders approach, their horses stirring clouds of dust, their swords glinting in the torchlight. They're a small band, but bold, thinking the night will hide them. They don't know Ishmael. He moves silently, his sons following, their steps blending with the wind. Kedar takes position among the rocks, his arrows ready. Nebaioth, hidden in the shadows, signals to his father. Ishmael, crouched low, feels the desert's pulse, the faint tremor of hooves, the rustle of cloaks. The arrogance of men who think they've caught their prey unaware. He waits, his breath steady, his hand on his bow. The raiders reach the well, their leader dismounting, his voice loud as he claims the water for his own. That's when Ishmael acts. A single arrow slices through the night, landing at the leader's feet, its shaft quivering in the sand. The raiders freeze, their torches casting wild shadows. Another arrow follows, then another, each one striking the ground with precision, a warning that says, "You are seen." The raiders hesitate, then retreat, their shouts swallowed by the dark. They came for water. They leave with nothing but fear. The camp erupts in quiet relief. Kedar, his eyes bright with adrenaline, grips his father's shoulder. "How did you do that?" he asks. Ishmael smiles, a rare softness in his weathered face. "The desert taught me," he says, "and God guided my hand." Nebaioth returns with the younger boys, their faces a mix of awe and pride. Ishmael gathers them around the fire, his voice steady. "This well is ours, not because we took it, but because God gave it. Guard what he gives, but never with pride. The desert humbles us all." His sons nod, their bond strengthened by the night's victory. They're not just brothers, they're a unit, a family forged in the crucible of survival. Ishmael's wife brings water from the well, her hands steady as she pours it for her sons. Hagar, her eyes shining, whispers, "God hears." And in that moment, Ishmael knows it's true. The God who heard his cry as a boy is still listening, still watching, still protecting. But the desert doesn't let victories linger. Word of the raid spreads, and with it, the reputation of Ishmael's clans. Merchants speak of the man whose arrows strike like lightning, whose sons guard the wells like sentinels. Other tribes, wary but curious, begin to approach. Not with swords, but with offers of alliance. Nebaioth, with his steady wisdom, negotiates peace with a neighboring clan, trading grazing rights for mutual protection. Mibsam and Mishma, ever the traders, use the incident to secure better deals, their words as sharp as their father's arrows. Kedar, though, remains vigilant, his warrior's heart sensing that peace is fleeting in a land where water is worth more than gold. Ishmael watches it all, his heart torn between pride and caution. He knows the desert is a place of balance. Every victory brings a new challenge, every gain a new test. As the years pass, the raids become more frequent. Each one a reminder that the clans of Ishmael are no longer invisible. One summer, a larger band approaches, their numbers greater, their intent clearer. They don't just want a well. They want dominance. Ishmael, now graying at the temples, gathers his sons in the pre-dawn light. "We don't fight for glory," he tells them. "We fight for what God has given us, our home, our family, our promise." This time, the strategy is different. Ishmael leads the raiders into a narrow wadi, where the dunes hide his sons. Kedar and Jetur strike from the shadows, their arrows sowing confusion. Nebaioth and Tima block the exit, their presence enough to unnerve the invaders. The raiders, expecting an easy fight, find themselves outmatched, not by numbers, but by the desert itself. They flee, leaving behind a sword and a lesson. The clans of Ishmael are not to be trifled with. This victory, larger than the last, marks a turning point. The clans are no longer just survivors. They're protectors, guardians of the desert's heart. Merchants now seek them out, offering goods in exchange for safe passage. Neighboring tribes send emissaries, their words cautious but respectful. Ishmael's sons, each finding their place, begin to lead their own camps. Nebaioth's tent becomes a hub for alliances, Kedar's a training ground for warriors, Mibsam and Mishma's a center for trade. The younger boys, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tima, Jetur, Naphish, and Kadima follow their brothers, their skills growing, their loyalty fierce. Ishmael's wife, her strength unwavering, binds the family together, her hands weaving the tents that shelter their growing nation. Hagar, her voice softer now, tells her grandsons stories of the well of the angel, of the God who never forgets. And Ishmael, standing at the center of it all, sees the promise unfolding, not in palaces or armies, but in the tents that stretch across the dunes, in the sons who carry his name, in the faith that holds them together. Yet, even in victory, Ishmael carries a quiet weight. At night, when the camp is still, he steps outside, his eyes on the stars. He thinks of Abraham, his father, whose love once warmed him, but whose hands sent him away. He thinks of Sarah, whose coldness shaped his exile. He thinks of Isaac, the brother he's never known, and wonders if he, too, looks at these stars. The pain of rejection is fainter now, softened by time and purpose, but it's there, a shadow that lingers. Hagar sees it, her mother's heart attuned to her son's silence. "You've built more than a camp," she tells him one evening, her hand on his arm. "You've built a nation. God's nation." Ishmael nods, his heart steadied by her words. He knows the desert will bring more challenges, more raiders, more tests. But he also knows the God who heard him as a boy is still listening, still guiding, still fulfilling the promise. That's where we'll leave Ishmael for now, standing tall in the desert, his sons united, his clan strong, his name a shield against the night. But the story isn't over. What happens when the desert's challenges grow, when empires cast their eyes on Ishmael's routes? How will his sons carry the promise forward? And what happens when the past calls him back? When the shadow of Abraham's tents falls across the dunes once more? Stick with us on the Untold Scriptures to find out. If this story is speaking to you, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Ishmael's journey is a reminder that God's promises are stronger than any raid, brighter than any torch, and eternal as the desert itself. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to the Untold Scriptures, where we're peeling back the layers of stories that don't just live in ancient texts, but speak to our hearts today, reminding us of God's unshakable promises. If you've been with us on this journey, you know we're deep in the saga of Ishmael, the boy cast out into the desert, rejected by his family, yet heard by the God who never forgets. In our last video, we saw Ishmael's clans rise as a force in the wilderness, their tents spreading across the dunes, their wells guarded by his son's sharp eyes and steady hands. Led by Nebaioth's honor and Kedar's fire, they've faced down raiders, protected their lifeline, and earned a name that echoes beyond the sands. But the desert isn't just a place of battles and trade routes, it's a place of the soul, where silence forces you to face yourself, your purpose, your God. Today, we're diving into a quieter, but deeper chapter of Ishmael's life, a chapter where he grapples with the meaning of his name, God hears, and discovers that his exile wasn't a curse, but a calling. So, settle in, maybe grab a warm drink, and let's walk with Ishmael as he becomes not just a leader of men, but a man of faith. Or is there more? A purpose that goes beyond the dunes, beyond the tents, beyond the life he's carved out? The stars above, the same ones Abraham once pointed to, seem to hold an answer. But it's one he must find for himself. Hagar, despite her age, senses her son's restlessness. One evening, as the fire burns low, she sits beside him, her hands folded. her eyes sharp despite the years. "You're searching," she says, her voice soft but piercing. "I know that look. I had it once, when I ran from Sarah, pregnant and alone. The desert strips you bare. But it also shows you truth." Ishmael looks at her, his mother, the woman who carried him through exile, who taught him to survive. "What truth?" he asks, his voice low, almost hesitant. Hagar smiles, her face etched with the lines of a life hard-lived but faithful. "The truth that God didn't just save you," she says. "He chose you. Not for Abraham's tents, not for Canaan's hills. But for this, your desert, your people, your promise. You're not Isaac. You're Ishmael. And that's enough." Her words sink deep, like water into parched sand. Ishmael has spent years proving himself to the desert, to his sons, to the God who named him. But Hagar's words shift something inside him. His life isn't a rejection, it's a calling. He's not meant to carry Abraham's covenant or inherit Canaan's lands. He's meant to lead a people free from walls, a nation born in the wilderness, united not by wealth or power but by faith. The realization doesn't come all at once. It grows slowly, in the quiet moments, when he watches his sons tend their flocks, when he hears his wife sing to their grandsons, when he feels the desert's wind on his face. Each moment is a reminder that God's promise wasn't just about survival, it was about purpose. Ishmael begins to lead differently. He's always been a protector, his bow a shield against raiders, his wisdom a guide for his sons. But now he's a teacher of the soul. One evening, as his sons gather around the fire, Nebaioth with his steady gaze, Kedar with his restless energy, Mibsam and Mishma with their trader's cunning, he speaks not of hunting or trade but of faith. "We are not like other people," he tells them, his voice carrying the weight of years. "We don't have cities or kings. We have the desert, and we have God. He heard me when I was nothing, when I was cast out. He hears you now. Trust him, not just with your lives, but with your hearts." His sons listen, their faces lit by the fire, their eyes reflecting a new understanding. Nebaioth nods, his honor deepened by his father's words. Kedar, usually quick to act, sits still, absorbing the call to faith. Even the younger boys, Duma and Massa, Hadad, feel the weight of their father's story, the story of a God who listens. This shift in Ishmael's heart ripples through the camp. He begins to settle disputes with a new kind of wisdom, one rooted not just in survival but in purpose. When two of his sons, Hadad and Tema, argue over a trade deal gone wrong, Ishmael listens patiently, his hands steady as he sharpens an arrow. "The desert teaches us to share," he says. "Not because we're weak, but because we're faithful. God gave us this land, these wells, these flocks. Hoard them, and you lose them. Share them, and you gain more than goods, you gain trust." His words calm the brothers, and they agree to split the profits, strengthening ties with a neighboring clan. Ishmael's wisdom spreads, not just among his sons but to other tribes who hear of the man who leads with fairness, whose tents are open to the weary, whose wells offer water to those in need. Hagar, watching her son, sees the man he's becoming. She's weaker now, her steps unsteady, but her heart is strong. One night, as they sit alone by the fire, she tells him a story she's told before. But it feels new in this moment. "When I fled from Sarah, pregnant with you, I thought I was alone," she says, her voice a whisper against the crackle of the flames. "But God saw me. He sent an angel to a servant, a nobody, and gave you a name. That's who he is, Ishmael. He sees the forgotten. He hears the silent. And he's never left us." Ishmael listens, his heart stirred. He's heard the story countless times, but now it lands differently. It's not just a story of survival, it's a story of purpose, of a God who chooses the outcast, who names the rejected, who builds nations from dust. Ishmael begins to teach his sons this truth. He gathers them under the stars, their faces a mix of youth and strength, and tells them of the well, the angel, the promise. "Your name is tied to mine," he says. "Ishmael, God hears. When you're lost, when you're broken, when the world turns its back, he hears. Live like you believe it." His sons, from Nebaioth to Kedemah, carry this lesson into their own tents, their own lives. They begin to pray differently, not just for water or safety, but for guidance, for strength, for faith. The camp, once defined by its bows and wells, becomes a place of worship, its people bound by a shared belief in the God who heard their father's cry. This faith shapes Ishmael's leadership. When a drought strikes, drying up lesser wells, he doesn't panic. He leads his sons to hidden springs, teaching them to trust the desert's secrets and the God who provides. When a merchant tries to cheat Mibsam in a trade, Ishmael advises patience over anger, turning a loss into an alliance. When Kedar, ever the warrior, wants to strike back at a rival tribe, Ishmael counsels restraint, saying, "God fights for us. Our arrows are for protection, not vengeance." His sons learn, not just to survive, but to live with purpose. The clans grow stronger. Not in numbers alone, but in unity, their tent's a testament to a faith that endures. Yet, even as Ishmael embraces his calling, the shadow of his past lingers. At night, when the camp sleeps, he steps outside, his eyes on the stars. He thinks of Abraham, his father, whose voice once promised him the world, but whose hands sent him away. He thinks of Sarah, whose coldness shaped his exile. He thinks of Isaac, the brother he's never known, and wonders if he, too, feels the weight of a promise. The pain is quieter now, softened by years and purpose, but it's there. A faint echo in a heart that's learned to trust. Hagar sees it, her mother's intuition sharp as ever. "You don't need Abraham's tents," she tells him one evening, her hand on his. "You have God's promise. That's your inheritance." Ishmael nods, his heart steadied by her words. He knows the desert will bring more trials, raiders, droughts, disputes, but he also knows his purpose is clear: to lead his people, to honor his name, to trust the God who hears. The clans of Ishmael are now a force in the desert, their tents stretching further. Their wells guarded, their trade routes bustling. Merchants speak of them with respect, tribes with caution, and the name Ishmael carries a weight that reaches beyond the dunes. But it's not the wells or the trade that define them, it's their faith. Ishmael, once a boy left to die, is now a patriarch, not of cities or kings, but of a people bound by a promise. His sons, from Nebaioth's honor to Kedar's fire, carry his story, his faith, his God. And as the stars burn above, Ishmael knows he's not just surviving, he's fulfilling a purpose greater than himself. That's where we'll leave Ishmael for now, his heart anchored in faith, his clans united by a promise, his name a beacon in the desert. But the story isn't over. What happens when the past calls him back, when the death of his father draws him to Canaan? How will his sons carry the legacy forward in a world that grows ever more complex? Stick with us on the Untold Scriptures to find out. If this story is speaking to your heart, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Ishmael's journey is a reminder that God's promises shine brighter than any star, stronger than any storm, and eternal as the desert itself. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to the Untold Scriptures, where we're diving into the stories that don't just fill ancient pages, but pulse with life, faith, and the enduring promises of God. If you've been journeying with us, you know we're deep in the saga of Ishmael, the boy cast out into the desert, rejected by his family, yet heard by the God who never forgets. In our last video, we saw Ishmael embrace his calling, not as a rival to his brother Isaac, but as a patriarch of a free, faithful people. His sons, from Nebaioth's steady honor to Kedar's fiery strength, are growing into leaders, their tents a testament to a promise taking root in the wilderness. Ishmael's heart has found peace in his name, God hears, and in the purpose God has given him. But today, we're stepping into a chapter that's heavy with emotion, a moment that pulls Ishmael back to the past he thought he'd left behind. The death of his father, Abraham, calls him to Canaan, to face his brother, his memories, and the weight of a life shaped by both love and exile. So, settle in, maybe grab a tissue. And let's walk with Ishmael as he returns to honor his father and find closure in a story that began with rejection. And if this story is moving you, hit that like button, subscribe, And ring the bell so you don't miss what's next. The desert night is cool, the stars blazing above like 1,000 promises scattered across the sky. Ishmael sits outside his tent, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The camp is quiet, his sons and grandsons sleeping, their tents stretching across the dunes like a constellation on earth. His wife, her strength a constant anchor, rests inside, her presence a reminder of the life they've built. Hagar, now frail, her steps slow but her spirit fierce, sleeps nearby, her stories of God's faithfulness woven into the fabric of their family. Ishmael is no longer the boy who nearly died under a desert bush or the young man learning to hunt. He's a patriarch, his graying hair and weathered hands telling the story of a life forged in the wilderness. His sons, Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbeel, and the others, are leaders now, guarding wells, trading with merchants, defending their people. The promise God made, that Ishmael would become a great nation, is unfolding before his eyes. But tonight, something stirs in his heart, a feeling he can't name. A pull toward a place he hasn't seen in years. The news comes at dawn, carried by a weary traveler passing through the desert. Abraham, Ishmael's father, is dead. The words hit like a stone, heavy and cold. Abraham, the man who held him as a child, who pointed to the stars and spoke of promises, who loved him but sent him away with a skin of water and a piece of bread. Ishmael stands still, his breath catching, his mind flooded with memories. He sees his father's strong hands, his warm smile, the way he'd laugh when Ishmael ran through the camp. He sees Sarah's cold eyes, her voice sharp with demand, cast out this slave woman with her son. He sees the moment Abraham handed him the water skin, his eyes wet with tears, his voice silent. The pain of that day, long buried under years of survival, rises again, sharp and raw. But so does something else: love, duty, a bond that time and distance can't break. Ishmael knows he must go to Canaan, to the place where his father's body lies, to honor the man who shaped him, even if that shaping came with pain. The journey is long, the desert giving way to the hills of Canaan. Ishmael travels alone, his bow slung across his back, his steps steady but heavy. The dunes fade into rocky paths, the air grows cooler. The landscape unfamiliar, yet achingly familiar. He passes the plains of Mamre, where Abraham once welcomed strangers who spoke of promises. He sees the tents of his father's people, now led by Isaac, the brother he's never truly known. Ishmael's heart is a tangle of emotions: grief for the father he lost, curiosity about the brother he never had, and a quiet pride in the life he's built despite it all. He wonders what Isaac knows of him, if Abraham ever spoke of the son sent away, if Sarah's heart ever softened. But these questions don't consume him. He's here for one purpose: to bury his father, to say goodbye, to find closure in a story that began with rejection. When Ishmael reaches Hebron, the air is thick with mourning. The cave of Machpelah, where Abraham will be laid to rest, looms ahead, its entrance a dark mouth in the hillside. Isaac is there, standing alone, his face lined with grief. Ishmael pauses, his breath catching. This is his brother, the son of Sarah, the heir of the covenant, the boy who took his place in Abraham's tents. Isaac is younger, his features softer, but there's something in his eyes that mirrors Ishmael's: a weight, a story, a promise. Their eyes meet, and for a moment, the world holds its breath. No words are spoken, no greetings exchanged. The silence is heavy, filled with years of separation, of unspoken questions, of a shared father who bound them together and tore them apart. Ishmael steps forward, his movement slow, deliberate. Isaac nods, a small gesture, but enough. They are not enemies, not rivals, just brothers bound by loss. Together, they enter the cave, carrying Abraham's body wrapped in cloth. The air is cool, the darkness heavy, the silence sacred. Ishmael's hands tremble as he helps lower his father into the earth, beside Sarah, who died years before. The act is simple but profound, a final duty to the man who gave him life, who loved him, who let him go. Ishmael's mind flashes to his childhood, Abraham's laughter, his stories of God, his promise of descendants as numerous as the stars. He wonders if Abraham knew, in his final days, that Ishmael had become a father of tribes, that his tents dotted the desert, that his sons carried the promise forward. He wonders if Abraham ever regretted sending him away. But as they lay the body to rest, Ishmael feels a shift. The pain of rejection, so long a companion, begins to loosen its grip. This moment, this act, is closure not just for Abraham's life, but for Ishmael's past. Outside the cave, the brothers stand side by side, the sun setting behind them. Isaac speaks first, his voice low. "He loved you," he says, his eyes on the horizon. "He spoke of you always." The words are simple, but they pierce Ishmael's heart. He nods, unable to speak, his throat tight. He wants to ask about Sarah, about the years he missed, about the covenant Isaac carries. But the silence is enough. They're sons of Abraham, each with their own promise, their own path. Isaac will carry the covenant, the land, the line of Israel. Ishmael will carry the desert, the tents, the nation born from exile. God's promise, vast as the stars, holds them both. For a moment, they stand together, not as rivals, but as brothers, bound by grief and blood. Then Ishmael turns, his steps leading back to the desert, his heart lighter than when he came. The journey home is quieter, the desert welcoming him like an old friend. Ishmael's thoughts are no longer heavy with questions. He sees Abraham's face in his mind. But it's the face of a father who loved him, not the one who sent him away. He sees Isaac, not as a rival but as a brother, carrying his own burden. He sees his sons, his wife, his mother, waiting in the tents that have become his home. The pain of exile, once a wound, is now a scar, a mark of survival, of faith, of a God who never forgot him. When he reaches the camp, his sons greet him, their faces a mix of concern and relief. Nebaioth, ever steady, asks, "Is it done?" Ishmael nods, his voice soft. "It's done." Kedar, his warrior's heart softened by his father's return, grips his shoulder. Hagar, her eyes sharp despite her age, sees the change in her son. "You've found peace," she says. Not a question, but a statement. Ishmael smiles, a rare, unguarded moment. "I've found God," he replies. Back in the camp, life resumes, but Ishmael is different. The burial of his father has closed a chapter, freeing him to fully embrace his role as a patriarch. He gathers his sons around the fire, their faces lit by the flames, and tells them of Abraham, not the man who sent him away, but the man who believed in a God of promises. He pointed to the stars, Ishmael says, his eyes lifting to the sky. He said our descendants would be like them. And look at us now. His sons listen, their hearts stirred. Nebaioth nods, his honor deepened. Kedar, usually restless, sits still, his eyes on the stars. The younger boys, Duma, Massa, Hadad, feel the weight of their father's story, a story that binds them to a promise greater than themselves. Ishmael's wife, her hands steady as she pours water, smiles quietly, her faith in her husband unwavering. Hagar, her voice soft, whispers, "God hears," and the words echo through the camp. The desert is unchanged, its dunes shifting, its wells precious, its dangers ever present. But Ishmael is changed. He leads with a new strength, not just of body but of soul. When raiders approach, he defends with wisdom, his arrows a warning rather than a weapon. When disputes arise among his sons, he settles them with fairness, his words rooted in faith. When merchants pass through, he trades with generosity, knowing God's provision is enough. The clans grow, their tents stretching further, their influence reaching beyond the desert. Ishmael knows the challenges will come: raiders, droughts, empires on the horizon, but he also knows his purpose. He is Ishmael, the son God named, the man God saved, the patriarch God chose. His life is not a rejection, it's a redemption, a testament to a God who hears. That's where we'll leave Ishmael for now. His heart at peace, his clans united, his faith a beacon in the desert. But the story isn't over. What happens as his son's tribes grow, their influence spreading across the sands? How will his legacy endure through the centuries, shaping nations and faiths? Stick with us on the Untold Scriptures to find out. If this story is speaking to your heart, hit that like button. Subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Ishmael's journey is a reminder that God's promises heal even the deepest wounds, shine through the darkest nights, and endure as long as the stars. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to the Untold Scriptures, where we dive into the stories that don't just sit in ancient texts, but live, breathe, and inspire us to see God's hand in the world. If you've been with us on this incredible journey, you know we're deep in the saga of Ishmael, the boy cast out into the desert, rejected by his family, yet heard by the God who never forgets. In our last video, we walked with Ishmael through a moment heavy with emotion, the death of his father, Abraham, and his return to Canaan to bury him alongside his brother, Isaac. That silent, sacred moment at the cave of Machpelah brought closure to a past marked by pain, freeing Ishmael to fully embrace his role as a patriarch. His sons, from Nebaioth's steady honor to Kedar's fiery spirit, are building a nation in the wilderness. Their tent's a testament to a promise kept. Today, we're stepping into a chapter of triumph, where Ishmael's legacy takes root across the desert, shaping tribes, trade routes, and history itself. This is the story of how a boy left for dead becomes the father of nations, his name echoing through the sands and the scriptures. So, grab a seat, maybe something to sip on, and let's journey back to the desert with Ishmael. And if this story is stirring your heart, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's next. The desert of Beersheba is a world of contrasts, scorching days and freezing nights, endless dunes and hidden springs, silence and sudden storms. Ishmael's camp, once a single tent shared with his mother, Hagar, is now a constellation of black tents stretching across the sands. The sturdy shelters, woven by the hands of his wife and daughters-in-law, stand firm against the wind, their dark fabric a symbol of resilience. Ishmael, now an older man, his hair streaked with silver, stands at the heart of it all, his bow still by his side, his eyes sharp despite the years. His sons Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedema are no longer boys but leaders, each carving out their own place in the desert. Their tents spread further every year, their flocks multiply, their wells draw merchants from distant lands. The promise God made to Hagar, that Ishmael would become a great nation, is no longer a whisper in the wilderness. It's a reality, etched in the sand, carried in the wind, alive in the laughter of grandsons. Nebaioth, the eldest, leads with a quiet strength, his honor earning alliances with neighboring tribes. Kedar, the warrior, guards the wells with a fierceness that makes raiders think twice. Mibsam and Mishma, with their traders' cunning, have turned the camp into a hub for caravans, their tents filled with spices from the east, cloth from Egypt, and iron from the north. Duma and Massa, quick and clever, scout the trade routes, their eyes sharp for opportunities and threats. Hadad's impetuous energy drives the younger boys, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedema, to explore new paths, their footsteps marking the desert as their own. Ishmael's wife, her hands still steady, oversees the women who weave, cook, and keep the camp alive. Hagar, though frail, remains the heart of the clans, her stories of the well and the angel binding them to their past. And Ishmael, standing tall despite his age, is the anchor, a patriarch whose name is no longer just his own but a banner for a people. The desert has always been a place of survival, but Ishmael's clans have made it a place of thriving. Their wells, guarded by Kedar's arrows and Nebaioth's wisdom, are lifelines for travelers and merchants. Caravans from Babylon, Egypt, and Phoenicia stop to trade, their camels laden with goods, their voices carrying news of distant lands. Mibsam and Mishma negotiate with a sharpness that belies their desert upbringing, securing deals that bring wealth to the tents. The black tents of Kedar, as the prophets will later call them, become a landmark, a sign of safety in a treacherous land. Merchants speak of the clans with respect, telling tales of the man whose arrows never miss, whose sons guard the routes, whose people offer water to the weary. The name Ishmael is no longer whispered in fear or pity, it's spoken with awe. A name that carries weight from the Red Sea to the Euphrates. This influence doesn't come without cost. The desert is a jealous master, and its resources, water, grazing lands, trade routes, are fought over with a ferocity that matches its heat. Rival tribes, envious of the clan's success, test their strength. But Ishmael's sons are ready. Kedar leads patrols, his bow a silent threat. Nebaioth negotiates peace when possible, his calm demeanor disarming even the most hostile. Duma and Massa scout for danger, their quick feet carrying warnings back to the camp. One night, a band of raiders, bolder than most, approaches a key well, their torches blazing in the dark. Ishmael, though older, takes his place among the dunes, his sons by his side. The raiders expect an easy victory, but they don't know the desert, or the man who calls it home. Arrows fly from the shadows, landing with precision, driving the invaders back without a single life lost. The victory is quiet but powerful, a testament to the unity and strength of Ishmael's clans. The prophets will later speak of these tribes, their names etched in scripture. Isaiah will mention Kedar, their tents a symbol of prosperity. Isaiah 60 verse 7, their flocks offered in worship. Jeremiah will warn of their strength, their bows of force to be reckoned with. Jeremiah 49 verse 28. These words, written long after Ishmael's time, are a testament to the legacy he's building. His sons are not just surviving, they're shaping history. The Kedarites, named for Ishmael's fiery son, will become known for their black tents and fierce independence. The Nabateans, linked to Nebaioth, will carve cities from rock, their trade routes stretching across the Arabian Peninsula. These tribes, born from a boy left for dead, will leave a mark on the world. Their story carried in the songs of elders, the tracks of caravans, the whispers of the wind. Ishmael watches it all with a quiet pride, his heart full but humble. He never sought this wealth, influence, a name that travels beyond the dunes. All he wanted was to survive, to protect his family, to honor the God who heard his cry. But God's promise was bigger than survival. It was about a nation, a people, a legacy. One evening, as the sun sets and the camp gathers around a fire, Ishmael tells his sons and grandsons the story that defines them. I was a boy cast out, dying under a bush, he says, his voice steady, his eyes on the flames. But God heard me. He sent an angel, opened a well, gave me a name. He promised I would live. And not just live, a nation would come from me. Look around you. That promise is here. His sons listen, their faces a mix of awe and resolve. Nebaioth nods, his honor deepened. Kedar grips his bow. His warrior's heart stirred. The younger boys, Duma, Massa, Hadad, lean closer, their eyes wide. Ishmael's wife, her hands resting on a grandson's shoulder, smiles quietly. Hagar, her voice a whisper, says, God hears, and the words echo through the camp. This story, told and retold, becomes the heartbeat of the clans. Elders pass it down, weaving it into songs and prayers. Children grow up hearing of the well, the angel, the boy who survived. The desert, once a place of exile, becomes a sacred stage, a place where God's faithfulness was proven. Ishmael's tents are more than shelters, they're symbols of a promise kept. His wells are more than water, they're reminders of a God who provides. His sons are more than men. They're the foundation of a nation. And Ishmael, once a rejected son, is now a patriarch, his name carried by the wind, his story written in the sands. He knows the desert will bring more challenges, raiders, droughts, empires on the horizon, but he also knows his legacy is secure. God's promise, spoken to Hagar years ago, is alive in every tent, every child, every prayer. At night, Ishmael steps outside, his eyes on the stars. They're the same stars Abraham showed him, the ones that promise descendants as numerous as they are. He no longer feels the sting of rejection, the ache of exile. He feels gratitude for Hagar, who carried him through, for his wife, who built with him, for his sons, who carry him forward. He feels awe for a God who heard a boy's cry and made it the cornerstone of a nation. He feels peace, knowing his life has been more than survival, it's been a testimony. The desert, with all its harshness, has become his home, his calling, his legacy. And as he stands there, the wind soft against his face, he knows his name will live on. Not just in his sons, but in the tribes that will shape the desert for centuries to come. That's where we'll leave Ishmael for now, his legacy spreading across the sands. His name a beacon of God's faithfulness. But the story isn't over. How does Ishmael's journey echo through time, connecting to faiths and cultures across the world? And what does his life mean for us today, for those who feel forgotten or cast aside? Stick with us on the Untold Scriptures to find out. If this story is speaking to your heart, hit that like button. Subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Ishmael's journey is a reminder that God's promises are stronger than any rejection, brighter than any star, and eternal as the desert itself. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to the Untold Scriptures, where we dive into the stories that don't just sit in sacred texts, but live in our hearts. Bridging time, faith, and humanity itself. If you've been journeying with us, you know we're deep in the saga of Ishmael, the boy cast out into the desert, rejected by his family, yet heard by the God who never forgets. In our last video, we saw Ishmael's legacy take root across the sands, his sons Nebaioth, Kedar, and the others, building a nation of tents, trade routes, and resilience. Their black tents, their guarded wells, their caravans stretching from Egypt to Babylon, have made the name Ishmael a beacon in the wilderness, a testament to God's promise fulfilled. Today, we're stepping beyond the desert to explore how Ishmael's story echoes through time, uniting faiths and cultures in a way few stories can. From the sands of Beersheba to the rituals of Eid al-Adha, Ishmael's life speaks to Jews, Christians, Muslims, and anyone who's ever felt forgotten. This is the story of a man whose journey from exile to patriarch became a bridge across traditions, a symbol of redemption for all. So, grab a seat, maybe a cup of tea, and let's journey with Ishmael one more time. And if this story is stirring your soul, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our final chapter. The desert sun sets slow, painting the dunes in shades of gold and shadow. Ishmael, now an older man, stands at the edge of his camp, his eyes tracing the horizon where his sons' tents stretch like stars on the earth. The air carries the scent of roasted goat, the laughter of grandsons, the rhythm of a life built from nothing. His wife, her hands still strong, weaves beside a fire, her presence a quiet anchor. Hagar, frail but fierce, rests in her tent, her stories of the well and the angel woven into the heart of the clans. Ishmael's sons, Nebaioth with his steady honor, Kedar with his warrior's fire, Mibsam and Mishma with their traders' cunning, are patriarchs in their own right, their camps bustling with life, their trade routes pulsing with goods from distant lands. The promise God made to Hagar, that Ishmael would become a great nation, is no longer a hope, it's a reality, alive in the tents of Kedar, the caravans of Nebaioth, the songs of a people who call the desert home. But Ishmael's story is bigger than the desert, bigger than his sons, bigger than the sands that shaped him. It's a story that reaches across centuries, across faiths, across hearts, carrying a truth that resonates even today. In the desert, Ishmael was a patriarch, a man who turned exile into legacy. But in the wider world, his name becomes something more, a symbol, a prophet, a bridge. For Muslims, Ishmael, known as Ismail in the Quran, is a central figure, a prophet chosen by God, an ancestor of Muhammad, the final messenger. The story of his life, preserved in Islamic tradition, is one of submission, faith, and divine redemption. The Quran tells of his birth to Hagar, called Hajar, a servant who bore Abraham's first son. It tells of their exile, not as a rejection, but as a divine journey to a new land, where God's plan would unfold. In the sands of Mecca, far from Beersheba. Hagar's desperate search for water becomes the Sa'i, the ritual walk between the hills of Safa and Marwa, performed by millions during the Hajj. The well that saved Ishmael, called Zamzam, is a sacred spring, its waters a symbol of God's mercy. Every year, during Eid al-Adha, Muslims honor Ishmael's willingness to be sacrificed. A story that mirrors Abraham's faith but centers Ishmael as the son who trusted God with his life. This isn't just a story, it's a ritual of faith. A legacy that binds millions to a boy who once lay dying under a bush. But Ishmael's story doesn't belong to one faith alone. In the Jewish and Christian traditions, he's a son of Abraham, a figure in the Genesis narrative whose life proves God's faithfulness even to those cast aside. The Hebrew Bible tells of his birth, his exile, his survival, and his descendants, tribes like Kedar and Nebaioth, mentioned by prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah, Isaiah 60 verse 7, Jeremiah 49 verse 28. These tribes, with their black tents and far-reaching caravans, shaped the ancient world, their influence stretching from the Arabian Peninsula to the edges of empires. Isaiah speaks of Kedar's flocks, offered in worship, a sign of their prosperity. Jeremiah warns of their strength, their bows of force in the desert. These are not just tribes, they're a legacy, a nation born from a promise. Proof that God's word to Hagar, "I will make him a great nation," Genesis 21 verse 18, was never forgotten. For Jews and Christians, Ishmael's story is a reminder that God's love is vast, his promises inclusive, his mercy boundless. Ishmael's legacy is more than scripture or ritual, it's a cultural force. His descendants, the Ishmaelites, became the backbone of desert trade. Their caravans linking east and west, carrying spices, silks, and stories. The Kedarites, with their sturdy tents, were known to poets and prophets, their names synonymous with freedom and strength. The Nabateans, tied to Nebaioth, carved cities like Petra from rock, their ingenuity turning the desert into a crossroads of civilizations. These tribes didn't build empires with walls or armies. They built them with resilience, faith, and the knowledge of the sands. Their tents, their wells, their routes became the arteries of the ancient world, their stories carried by merchants to Babylon, Egypt, and beyond. Ishmael, once a boy with nothing but a water skin, became the father of peoples who shaped history, their legacy etched in the trade routes that crisscrossed the desert, in the tales told around fires, in the faith that sustained them. This universal resonance makes Ishmael's story timeless. He's more than a patriarch. He's a mirror for anyone who's ever felt rejected, forgotten, or cast out. His life speaks to the exile who finds a home, the outcast who finds purpose, the broken who find redemption. Imagine a young woman, alone in a new city, her dreams dismissed by those around her. She sees Ishmael, sent away with nothing, yet building a nation through faith. Imagine a man struggling with loss, feeling abandoned by those he trusted. He hears of Ishmael, whose cry in the desert was answered by God himself. Imagine a community, marginalized and overlooked, finding strength in the story of a boy who became a patriarch despite the world's rejection. Ishmael's journey is their journey, a reminder that God sees the unseen, hears the silent, and lifts the lowly. His story crosses borders, faiths, and centuries, offering hope to anyone who's ever felt they don't belong. In the camp, Ishmael senses this legacy, even if he doesn't know its full reach. He stands among his sons, their tents a testament to a life that defied the odds. Nebaioth, now a leader of alliances, negotiates with tribes, his honor a light in the desert. Kedar, his bow always ready, guards the wells, his strength a shield for his people. Mibsam and Mishma, their minds sharp, turn trade into wealth, their caravans a lifeline for the clans. The younger sons Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tima, Jatur, Naphish, Kadima carry their father's story, their lives shaped by the promise that began with a well. Ishmael's wife, her hands weaving the fabric of their home, binds the family with love and resilience. Hagar, her voice weaker but her spirit unbroken, tells her grandsons of the angel, the well, the God who hears. And Ishmael, his heart full, knows his life is more than survival. It's a bridge, connecting the past to the future, the desert to the world, his story to ours. One evening, as the fire burns low, Ishmael gathers his family. The stars above are bright, the same stars Abraham once showed him, promising descendants as numerous as they are. "You are my legacy," he tells his sons, his voice steady but warm. "But you're more than that. You're God's promise. He heard me when I was nothing, when I was cast out. He hears you now. Carry that truth. Not just in your tents, but in your hearts." His sons nod, their faces lit by the flames. Nebaioth's eyes shine with resolve, Kedar's with pride, the younger boys with wonder. Hagar, her hands trembling, whispers, "God hears," and the words settle over the camp like a blessing. Ishmael's wife, her hand on his, smiles quietly, her faith in him unwavering. The story they carry of a boy saved, a mother redeemed, a nation born will live on, not just in their tents, but in the faiths that honor them, in the rituals that celebrate them, in the hearts that find hope in them. Ishmael's story is a bridge, uniting traditions that might seem divided. In Islam, he's Ismail, the son who trusted God, whose sacrifice is remembered in Eid al-Adha, whose legacy flows through the Zamzam well and the Kaaba in Mecca. In Judaism and Christianity, he's Ishmael, the son of Abraham, whose tribes fill the pages of Scripture, their tents a symbol of God's expansive love. Across these faiths, he's a testament to redemption, a proof that God's promises reach beyond borders, beyond rejection, beyond the desert. His life challenges us to see the forgotten, to hear the silent, to trust the God who never forgets. And as his descendants' caravans stretch across the sands, their stories told in markets and mosques, in synagogues and churches, Ishmael's name endures, a name that means God hears, a name that carries hope for all who feel cast aside. That's where we'll leave Ishmael for now, his legacy a bridge across time, his story a light for the forgotten. But we're not done yet. What does Ishmael's life mean for us today? For those who carry their own deserts, their own exiles? How does his journey inspire us to trust in a God who hears? Stick with us on the Untold Scriptures for our final chapter. If this story is speaking to your heart, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss it. Ishmael's journey is a reminder that God's promises are stronger than any rejection, brighter than any star, and eternal as the sands. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to the Untold Scriptures, where we've been diving into the stories that don't just live in ancient texts, but breathe in our hearts, reminding us of God's unshakable love and promises. If you've been with us on this incredible journey, you know we've been walking with Ishmael, the boy cast out into the desert, rejected by his family, yet heard by the God who never forgets. In our last video, we saw Ishmael's legacy stretch beyond the sands of Beersheba, becoming a bridge across faiths. His name, God hears, echoes in the tents of his descendants, in the rituals of Eid al-Adha, in the stories told by Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. From a boy saved by a well to a patriarch whose tribes shaped history, Ishmael's life is a testament to redemption. Today, we're closing his story with a chapter that's both reflective and inspiring, looking back on his journey and forward to what it means for us. This is the story of an old man at peace, a nation born from faith, and a promise that speaks to anyone who's ever felt forgotten. So, settle in, maybe grab a warm drink, and let's journey with Ishmael one last time. And if this story moves you, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's next on the Untold Scriptures. The desert air is cool tonight, the stars above blazing like a promise kept. Ishmael, now an old man, sits at the entrance of his tent, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes tracing the familiar constellations. His hair is white, his face etched with lines that tell a story of survival, struggle, and triumph. The camp around him is alive, not with the restless energy of youth, but with the steady rhythm of a nation. Tents stretch across the dunes, their black fabric woven by the hands of his wife, his daughters-in-law, his grandsons' wives. The laughter of children, the bleating of flocks, the murmur of evening prayers fill the air. Ishmael's sons Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedema are patriarchs now, their own tents surrounded by families, their own stories adding to the legacy. His wife, her strength undimmed by age, sits nearby, her hands still weaving, her presence a quiet anchor. Hagar, now too frail to walk far, rests inside, her voice a whisper, but her stories as powerful as ever. This is Ishmael's world, a world built from exile, from a single well, from a promise spoken by God himself. Ishmael's life has been a journey few could imagine. Born to Hagar, an Egyptian servant, named by God before his first breath, he was raised in Abraham's camp, loved by his father but rejected by Sarah, the wife who saw him as a threat. Cast out as a boy, he nearly died under a desert bush, his faint cry answered by an angel and a well that saved his life. That moment, when God heard him, became the cornerstone of his story. He grew into a man of the desert, a hunter, a husband, a father, a patriarch. His 12 sons, each a spark of the promise, have built clans that stretch across the sands, their wells and trade routes drawing merchants from Babylon to Egypt. The Kedarites, led by his fiery son Kedar, are known for their black tents and fierce independence. The Nabateans, tied to Nebaioth, will one day carve cities from rock, their legacy reaching far beyond the desert. Prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah will speak of these tribes, their names etched in scripture. Isaiah 60 verse 7, Jeremiah 49 verse 28, a testament to the nation God promised Hagar, I will make him a great nation, Genesis 21 verse 18. But Ishmael's legacy is more than tents or trade routes. It's spiritual, eternal, a light for the ages. As he sits under the stars, he reflects on the journey that brought him here. He remembers the pain of exile, the weight of Abraham's tearful goodbye, the sting of Sarah's rejection. He remembers the desert's cruelty, the thirst that nearly took him, the well that saved him. He remembers Hagar's faith, her stories of the angel, her unwavering belief that God saw them both. He remembers his wife, the Egyptian woman who walked beside him, her strength building a home in the wilderness. He remembers his sons, each one a miracle, each one a step toward the promise. The pain of his past, once a wound, is now a scar, a mark of redemption, of a God who heard a boy's cry and turned it into a nation. Ishmael's heart is at peace, not because his life was easy, but because it was purposeful. He was never forgotten, never forsaken, always heard. This peace shapes his final days. He gathers his sons around the fire, their faces a mix of youth and wisdom, their own sons and daughters listening nearby. You are my legacy, he tells them, his voice steady but warm, but you are more than that. You are God's promise. He heard me when I was nothing, when I lay dying under a bush. He named me before I was born. He hears you now. Live like you believe it. His sons nod, their eyes reflecting the flames. Nebaioth, his honor unwavering, listens with resolve. Kedar, his warrior's heart softened by age, grips his father's words like a bow. The younger sons Duma, Massa, Hadad lean closer, their hearts stirred by the story they've heard since childhood. Ishmael's wife, her hand on his, smiles quietly, her faith in him as strong as ever. Hagar, her voice barely a whisper, says, God hears, and the words settle over the camp like a blessing. The story of the well, the angel. The promise is not just Ishmael's, it's theirs, a legacy they'll carry into the future. This legacy stretches far beyond the desert. In Islamic tradition, Ismail, is a prophet. A son who trusted God, whose story is woven into the fabric of faith. His willingness to be sacrificed, celebrated during Eid al-Adha, is a testament to submission. A story that binds millions to a moment of divine trust. The well of Zamzam, born from Hagar's desperate search, flows in Mecca, its waters a symbol of God's mercy. The Sa'i. The walk between Safa and Marwa retraces Hagar's steps, a ritual that echoes her faith and Ishmael's survival. In Jewish and Christian traditions, Ishmael is a son of Abraham. His tribe's a proof of God's expansive love. His story speaks to anyone who's ever felt cast out, showing that God's promises reach beyond borders, beyond rejection, beyond the wilderness. His descendants, from the Kedarites to the Nabateans, shaped the ancient world, their trade routes carrying goods and stories, their tents a symbol of resilience. Their legacy lives in the songs of elders, the prayers of pilgrims, the hearts of those who hear. Ishmael's story is for us too. It's for the single mother working 2 jobs, feeling invisible, yet finding strength in a God who sees. It's for the refugee, far from home, clinging to hope in a world that turns away. It's for the person who feels rejected, unworthy, forgotten, yet discovers that their cry is heard. Ishmael's life is a mirror, reflecting our own deserts, our own struggles, our own need for redemption. He was a boy with nothing, no home, no future. No hope, yet God named him, saved him, made him a nation. His journey challenges us to trust, even when the world casts us aside, even when the desert seems endless. It reminds us that God's promises are not bound by circumstance, that His love is not limited by rejection, that His ears are always open to our cries. Ishmael's story is a call to faith, to resilience, to hope, a call that echoes across time, across faiths, across hearts. As Ishmael sits under the stars, his heart is full. He sees Abraham's face, not in pain but in pride, pointing to the stars that promise descendants as numerous as they are. He sees Hagar, her faith carrying him through exile. He sees his wife, her strength building a home from dust. He sees his sons, their tents a nation, their lives a legacy. He sees the desert, not as a place of death but as a stage for God's faithfulness. He knows his name, God hears, is more than a name, it's a truth, a promise, a testimony. The pain of his past, the trials of his present, the uncertainties of the future, all are held in the hands of a God who never forgot him.